Yeah, hey.
Building a better Bay Area. Moving forward, finding solutions. This is ABC7 News.
Hi there, I'm Kristen Z. You're watching Getting Answers live on ABC7. We always ask experts your questions every day at 3 to get answers for you in real time. Today, we're looking at the soaring cost of wine tasting in Sonoma County. A new report finds the cost is up 44% from before the pandemic. We'll talk to a wine blog editor about what's driving these higher prices. Also, our media partners at the San Francisco Standard are investigating the San Francisco Fire Department's practice of injecting thousands of people in custody with a sedative. Is this normal? Is it safe? Is it ethical? The Standard senior reporter will join us with details. But first, environmentalists are sounding the alarm about Governor Newsom's proposed climate change package that he hopes lawmakers will approve by next week's deadline. Activists say it looks good on the surface, but has some seriously dangerous strings attached. Joining us live now is R.L. Miller, founder of Climate Hawks Vote, a grassroots group for the climate movement. R.L., thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me.
So overall, right, his climate change package, everything he's been announcing seems like something environmentalists would embrace. Make lots of energy, clean energy investments, stop the sale of gas-powered cars by 2035, reach net zero emissions by 2045. You applaud all that, right? So what are the concerns here?
A couple of different concerns. And the first, of course, is politics. It's very hard to look at anything that Newsom is doing without speculating about whether this is intended to burnish his credentials for a presidential run in 2024 or 2028 or some other point. And the second is that it's real obvious that all of these bills that he's proposing regarding setbacks and regarding codifying executive orders that he already issued are intended to be sweeteners for keeping Diablo Canyon open. And Diablo Canyon, the nuclear power plant, is highly controversial, and it was supposed to be shut down by the end of 2025. And instead, he has decided that he needs to keep it open. Why does he believe that he needs to keep it open? Some people say that we cannot get through the summer without rolling blackouts or keeping natural gas plants open, which is a climate no-no, or keeping Diablo Canyon open. And so he's settled on keeping Diablo Canyon open. And he's throwing a lot of, they're not very creative, but a lot of sweeteners at the legislature to make sure that the environmentally minded legislators in California will go along with the plan to keep Diablo open. But it's been made really clear to Sacramento folk that Diablo is the main course, the rest is just dessert.
All right, let's put aside any possible political ambitions, for a second and focus on the proposals and specifically what you're concerned about. Number one, you mentioned the Diablo Canyon, the last nuclear power plant that Newsom does want to keep open 5 to 10 years longer now, but he says it's needed to buy time to shore up the power supply because it's not like we snap our fingers and suddenly we have so much clean energy. Nobody wants rolling blackouts, right? Our energy grid exactly hasn't been that reliable. So do you acknowledge that there is a degree that we, even if we don't want it, may need the energy supplied by that for a while longer?
We want to get clean energy online as fast as we possibly can. We want Governor Newsom to step up and be a climate leader. We want him to do something about the California PUC's decision to put a huge solar tax on rooftop solar homeowners. So I appreciate his concern that we might need Diablo open for another year or two, but at the same time, there are analyses floating around the assembly saying that we don't need Diablo. We can do this and avoid rolling blackouts with clean energy entirely. And that would be far preferable.
All right. I also want to explore another element that you object to, and that is a loophole, if you will, that you say is for industries to be able to stop cutting their emissions, right? This is the carve out for carbon capture technology. Explain to our viewers what you mean by this and explain how carbon capture technology works.
I don't have a science degree. Carbon capture technology is a very broad term for the idea that we can pull carbon out of the atmosphere and pump it underground into what is called capture and storage. It has never been proven to work. It's extraordinarily expensive. There's a lot of money for it in the big federal bill that President Biden just signed. And so there's going to be a lot of experimenting around with it. But at the same time, the oil companies see this as their lifeline to keep on drilling and keep on fracking. The scientists say that some amount of carbon capture may be necessary to pull out carbon that has already been emitted. That's one thing. But it's entirely different for the oil companies to think that they can just keep on extracting, keep on mining, keep on drilling, and just swallow a magic pill that will make all the emissions go away. I too would like to swallow a magic pill that would make me rich, thin, beautiful, and eating chocolate cake for the next 30 years.
Wouldn't we all? But look, carbon capture technology, as you said, it's not just Newsom. President Biden certainly supports it. It's in the Inflation Reduction Act, which has subsidies, right, for companies that are doing that. And look, I understand the argument that you're saying being able to capture it and put it aside may extend the lives of these companies by saying, hey, we're not that bad. But do you see it as an all or nothing? I mean, do we not need to do both? That is, as we continue to cut emissions and move to clean energy, do we not also need to support the capture of emissions and say we got to do both?
We needed to get that bill passed. And to get that bill passed, we had to throw in some billions of dollars in political bribes. Let me just be blunt here. This was bribes to Senator Manchin and some of the people on the other side of the aisle. We got it done. We need to acknowledge that we can do something with this money. We can set it on fire, or we can invest it in carbon technology. I'm not sure which one is going to end up being less useful in the long run. I have not seen anything the carbon capture works, that it's economically efficient, or that it is ever going to scale to the way that we need to have it scaled. So all in all, I'm pretty opposed to carbon capture technology, and I say that the better answer is to just ramp up all the clean energy right now, get rid of that solar tax that Governor Newsom's PUC wants to put on solar homeowners, and go forward with clean energy and solar for all of California.
Right, that rooftop solar tax issue will be much debated, a lot of feelings about that. But I want to ask you about, your hope, and that is, of course, for the building of more infrastructure for clean energy, whether that is wind or solar or otherwise. How do you think we're doing in that regard here in California?
We're always doing a lot, and we're still never doing enough. Speaking as a wildfire survivor, this is personal to me. We need to get more solar all the time, everywhere. If you fly over the Inland Empire and you see all those naked roofs, and by that I mean all those warehouses that don't have solar panels on the tops, you think that we're just not doing enough. We are doing a lot. And honestly, Governor Newsom is doing a lot of very good things, including the order today to stop selling ICE cars, gasoline-powered cars, by 2035. Mm-hmm. At the same time, we need to do more. We always need to do more.
All right. Well, legislators certainly have that deadline next week, right? They adjourn for the year next Wednesday. Do you think this will pass? And do you hope it will pass, despite the imperfections, in your opinion, about it?
There's nothing bad in what he's trying to do. I felt that it was, other than Diablo, I felt that it was a little bit of not terribly creative stuff. There is one very good bill, and that's a bill for oil well setbacks. The general idea is simply to impose a half mile of setbacks between an oil well and somebody's home, which doesn't seem terribly controversial. I mean, Texas has oil well setbacks, California doesn't. But Governor Newsom was not there when we had bills to try to get them through last spring in the legislature. I'm glad that he's finally coming on board. I wish he'd done it last spring, but it's a very good bill. And the only question is, what are the legislators in Sacramento going to do with it? And I do appreciate Governor Newsom putting forth that setback bill at the last minute.
All right,
the
we'll
rest
be following
of
the bill for sure. We are out of time, but I do appreciate you coming on the show. R.L. Miller, founder of Climate Hawks Vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Coming up next, we're talking wine, but you may not want to say cheers. That's because raising a toast is costing you a lot more in the famed Sonoma County wine country. We'll explore why through the results of a new study next on Getting Answers. Let's do this. If you've been planning a trip to the wine country this fall, perhaps for the first time since the pandemic, get ready for sticker shock. Wine tasting costs have soared in Sonoma County. The new Sonoma Wine Tasting Report finds the average cost of a tasting in March of 2020, just before the lockdown, was $25. Or make that $26. Compare that to June of this year. The average price of a tasting, $36. That's a whopping 44% increase. Joining us live now is Eric Schwartzman, editor of the Sonoma Wine Tasting Blog, which put out this report. Eric, thanks for joining us. Tell us about the report. What did you set out to learn here?
Well, first of all, thanks, Kristen, for inviting me to be here. It's a pleasure to be with you to talk about the wine tasting report, which, as you saw, is on the cover of the San Francisco Chronicle today, which was really exciting. I think what we set to find from the report is, how healthy is the Sonoma winery business post-pandemic? And what shape did the pandemic, the lockdown, and inflation put on the industry?
All right. Well, how healthy is the industry can be. It could be related, but it can be separate from how much are they charging people these days. I'll get into the health with you in a little bit, but I want to talk about these prices because they were shocking. Let's just show people another point of comparison, and this is in Sonoma County. That's what you looked at. Glen Ellen's Benzinger? I don't drink, so you're going to have to pronounce this for me. Tell me
that was
about...
right. Benzinger, that was correct.
I did get it. Okay.
You said it right.
Okay, so they're tasting, walk us through the prices in 2020 and 2022 and Abbott's Passage too.
Okay, so first off, I don't think they're shocking. I think the increases are marginal compared to what we're seeing in other sectors.
Yeah, like 20%, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're up the highest in Healdsburg. We saw prices up 74% in Healdsburg. In Santa Rosa, prices were up 70%. City of Sonoma, prices are up 33%. Sebastopol, wine tasting prices up 20%, and Glen Ellen up 12%. Now, interestingly enough, prices were actually down in Geyserville, which is obviously the furthest distance from San Francisco in the East Bay. So if you're on a budget and you're willing to make the drive, you might want to consider a Geyserville winery.
I like that. You got a tip. I was going to ask you that. What are some tips for visitors? Are you seeing any differences in price increases between the high-end wineries and the more mass market ones?
Well, the reason that we did, we are the Sonoma Wine Tasting Blog, and the reason that this is the Sonoma Wine Tasting Report and that we don't include Napa is because, Napa is where the big wineries are, but Sonoma is really a bastion for small business and micro wineries and small wineries.
Yeah.
And as much as we love tech, I don't think any of us wants to live in a world where we all work for Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. So we're really here to support small business and to support these sort of intimate, unpretentious, almost, should I say, divine experiences that you can have at a small winery.
Yeah, no,
where
people love...
the person pouring the wine is following the product from grape to glass.
It's a great experience, but I do have to ask you, right? The price increases, is that a result of their costs increasing, supply chain issues, labor shortage, what have you, or is it something else? Is it that finally people are coming back and they lost money for 2 years, so they'll just raise the prices?
So the thing to understand about the wine business is that it has a durability that's unique to the hospitality sector. Hotels and restaurants, they can easily change their prices, but winemaking costs are front-loaded, right? Because of the aging process, wines made this year won't be sold for years in advance. So regardless of what happens to prices in the future, winemakers still have to pay current market labor, transportation, and materials costs. And that's probably the biggest reason why tasting room prices are up.
All right. In addition to the prices being a little different, costing, a little bit more, sticker shock, what have you, what else is different in terms of the experience in the wine tasting room? Anything that's changed because of the pandemic?
Yes. So in the Sonoma Wine Tasting Report, we actually segmented our research by town. And, what we found is that there's basically, the big change is that most wineries are reservation only now. It used to be you could just show up. But now 85% of Sonoma wine tasting rooms are by appointment only. And I think this is probably because of two things. First, social distancing made wine bar tasting pretty much impossible because you can't pack a bunch of people around a bar. And then for the second reason, I think, the shift to reservations meant that it was easier for small wineries. And I think it's important to understand that most wineries in Sonoma are small wineries to balance staffing against customer demand. Because if you're a small winery, you can't afford to staff a wine tasting room if there are no customers. And so for that reason, I think reservation only is here to stay.
Got it. Any money saving tips before we leave, and other than driving a little farther out to Geyserville?
Look, Sonoma draws a different type of consumer. Sonoma is the place that attracts people who want something new, who want something obscure, who want something off the beaten path. These aren't people who want to be herded through a hospitality center, like cattle at some mega winery that does 1 million cases a year. These are people that want to go meet someone who's making 2,500 cases a year, 5,000 cases a year. And I honestly don't think price is that big of a factor for that audience. Whether it's $25 or $36, it's nominal. The reality is this is a chance to get outside the world of big tech, outside the world of multinational corporations, and really sort of get your hands into the soil, walk the vineyard, and have a spiritual experience.
All right, I gotcha. I hear what you're saying. It's a more intimate experience, and a lot of people do like that. All right, folks can check out the full Sonoma Wine Tasting Report where? Real quickly, we got to go.
halleckvineyard.com/wine report.
All right. Hey, thank you so very much, Eric. Great talking with you.
Thanks for having me.
And cheers. All right, paramedics sometimes have to calm people with a sedative, but are they doing so in alarmingly large numbers in San Francisco without consent and without regard for potential side effects? Our media partner, the San Francisco Standard, asked those questions and looked into this and will join us next on Getting Answers. No time for water. Our media partners at the San Francisco Standard have launched an investigation into the San Francisco Fire Department after their practice of injecting people with sedatives came to light. We first reported on it earlier this month when the woman in this video filed a lawsuit against the city and county of San Francisco. She was forcibly removed from the Chase Center while protesting at an NBA Finals game in June. She then says a paramedic injected her with a sedative without her consent. As the Standard reports in a new article, SF Fire has injected people with a sedative 4,000 times since 2018. So now they're asking why. And joining us live is Koehn, senior reporter for the Standard. Josh, good to see you.
Great to see you too, Kristen.
All right, so the fire department and EMTs do enter situations where they might have to calm people down, and sometimes they administer sedatives. So what are the questions raised in your investigation?
Yeah, the first question was just how often is this happening? We were looking into the lawsuit that was filed by this person, Koehn McKnight, who claimed that they were drugged against their will at a Warriors finals game. And so the first question was just, okay, well, if this happened to this person, how often is it happening to other people in San Francisco? And we found that based on our records requests, it had happened more than 4,000 times since the beginning of 2018. And just the broad numbers, that just is kind of startling. No one in our newsroom was aware that sedatives were being administered 2 to 3 times a day across the city. And we started reaching out to medical experts and people in the activist community. And many of them were also surprised to learn just how widespread this practice is amongst paramedics in the SF Fire Department.
All right, in the McKnight case, we saw a video of her that her attorney shared. You saw her inside the ambulance, and they told her that the sedative was administered for safety. So is that a reasonable explanation, and one that in your investigation, found if that's one that they use a lot?
Well, for Koehn McKnight's case, they say that it was done against their will, and there was no reason to do it. It was just an act of civil disobedience. Koehn also said that a police sergeant more or less threatened them with a sedative if they didn't calm down, and that's when the needle came out. When we spoke with the fire department, a spokesperson told us that midazolam, the sedative that they administer, is usually only done to protect someone from harming themselves or others. We do know that there have been incidents in the past in which people were being non-compliant with officers trying to arrest them, and they were administered midazolam. In one instance in 2017, a man died after receiving the shot. The medical examiner did not rule that that was the cause of death. And we did just find out this afternoon from the fire department that they're saying that they are not aware of anyone having a severe adverse reaction or dying after a result of receiving a sedative while in restraints.
Okay. Look, I know in hospitals it's not unreasonable to give potentially violent patients a sedative, right? But are EMTs allowed to do so on the street without consent and using it on protesters who don't think they're being violent? I mean, who makes the call, right? I wonder if that's in the books somewhere in SF Fire Department.
Yeah, they do have a policy in place on how and when to give a sedative to someone. In the policy, it actually says that someone can refuse to receive it. However, the policy also says that you're not going to give a sedative to someone unless they are basically not capable of calming down. So it kind of goes both ways. We're all used to seeing movies in which a person is given a sedative, often against their will.
Yeah.
When it comes to the way that San Francisco Fire does it, we tried to ask for when, where, and why all of these sedatives have been given. And the fire department has cited HIPAA law and also saying that it does not compile this data in a way. I would question whether or not that is a best practice, considering that if you're going to be giving out, 4,000 shots since the beginning of 2018, the public has a right to know why people are getting these shots, when and where. Koehn McKnight's case very much is apropos to this because they were protesting the Roe v. Wade decision by the Supreme Court. And there were a lot of protests in 2020, which is also the year that the fire department gave out the most sedatives out of this 4.5-year period. So we'd like to know more answers about why, when, and where.
All right. So, Josh, don't go away. We want to continue this conversation with you to dive a little bit more into what the San Francisco Public Health Department told you and what the fire department's response is. So you can join us on Facebook Live. But in the meantime, you can check out more of the San Francisco Standard's original reporting on their website, sfstandard.com. And ABC7 News will continue to bring you more segments featuring their city-focused journalism. We'll be right back. All right, so Josh, I'm not sure what the city departments told you, both the fire department and public health, you know, when you got these results and looked at the large number, 4,000. I'm just going to guess, and I don't know if I'm on the right track, that they might point to the particulars of San Francisco, right, being a large city, with, you know, the issues that it has with regard to overdoses, or a large number of people who may have mental health emergencies, all of which may put them in more situations in which sedatives may be needed. So I don't know. Is that something that they mentioned, or did they say something else?
You know, we didn't get a lot of specifics from the fire department on, you know, what would be the exact reasons for each instance, or even kind of broadly. It was more of, you're absolutely right, and we mentioned this in our story. San Francisco has a drug crisis. San Francisco has a mental health crisis in its streets. And anyone who walks around downtown is, you know, well aware of this situation. So yeah, San Francisco could be, you know, a place where sedatives are given more and maybe need to be given more because of the condition of some of the people paramedics come into contact with. But I would also say that, you know, we are looking into whether other cities like San Jose, Oakland, you know, major cities in the Bay Area, are they doing this as prolifically as the San Francisco Fire Department? We're still trying to answer these questions right now. It's been a little bit slow trickling out of the information when it comes to these public agencies.
All right, Josh, really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Great work there. I hope folks will check it out on sfstandard.com. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Susan.
All right, this time I have a chance for a water break. Mm-hmm.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Thanks so much for joining us today on this interactive show, Getting Answers. We'll be here every weekday at 3 and on air and on live stream answering your questions. I'll see you at 4.